Hi everyone, welcome back to Learn With Me. I'm Deborah Hanson, and today we're going to look at AP Psychology 5.4, Selection of Categories of Psychological Disorders. There are 10 CED questions for this section of Unit 5, and this is the 10th one. So hang on, here we go. We're going to break them all down for you. So on these slides, you can see the key terms for this section of Unit 5. This is the entire 5.4, so this is the vocab or the key terms for the all 10 CED questions that we've had to go through. So I've got all 10 CED questions broken down one by one, as well as a video with all the key terms, with the definitions and real life examples, so that you can learn them to apply them on test day. Honestly, I always say the key to the 5 are the key terms, so really important to learn those. Before we get started, thanks to everybody who has subscribed to the channel, hit that like button, sent me emails, written messages in the comments. I really appreciate it so much. Thank you. I love hearing from all of you. It's really nice to see like everybody's journey and where you're at with the new curriculum and how you're doing on tests. I love hearing that you've done well on your tests, and of course, I'm wishing all of you 5s on the upcoming AP exam. So today we're going to look at CED question number 10 for 5.4, and that is describe the symptoms and possible causes of selected personality disorders. Let's break all those down for you. So as usual, we're going to start with a little overview of what we're going to be talking about. So an overview of personality disorders. So the definition is personality disorders are enduring patterns of behavior and inner experience that deviate significantly from cultural expectations, are inflexible, and cause distress or impairment. So the key features we're going to be looking at are onset in adolescence and early adulthood, pervasive and stable over time, and that they're divided into 3 clusters based on shared characteristics. And today we're going to go through all the clusters, cluster A, B, and C, and talk about everything you need to know to do well on the test. So as I mentioned, let's explore the clusters of personality disorders as categorized in the DSM-5. So these are enduring patterns of inner experience and behavior that deviate from cultural expectations and cause significant distress or impairment. They're grouped into 3 clusters, A, B, and C, each with distinct traits and characteristics. Let's break them all down. Let's start with cluster A. That's odd or eccentric behaviors. So these individuals often appear unusual or socially detached. Disorders in this cluster share features related to social awkwardness, mistrust, or unconventional thinking. So first, let's start with paranoid personality disorder. The symptoms are pervasive distrust and suspicion of others without sufficient reason. Example, someone who believes their coworkers are secretly plotting against them, even if there's no evidence. The next one we're going to look at is schizoid personality disorder. So the symptoms are detachment from social relationships and limited emotional expression. For example, a person who prefers spending all their time alone and feels no desire for close friendships. The last one is schizotypical personality disorder, and that is the symptoms are eccentric behaviors, odd beliefs, discomfort in close relationships. So for example, believing in magical powers or speaking in strange, hard to follow ways. So the key takeaways for cluster A is that they are disorders that often resemble milder versions of schizophrenia, but without full-blown psychosis. Next, let's move on to cluster B, which is dramatic, emotional, or erratic behaviors. This cluster is characterized by intense emotions, impulsive actions, and often unstable relationships. These disorders are more likely to draw attention due to the outward expression of symptoms. Let's start with antisocial personality disorder. The symptoms are a disregard for others' rights. They're deceitful, impulsive, and remorseless. They have remorseless behavior. For example, someone who repeatedly breaks the law or manipulates others for personal gain. The next one is histrionic personality disorder. The symptoms are excessive emotionality and attention seeking. So for example, exaggerating personal issues just to gain sympathy or constantly needing to be the center of attention. The next one is narcissistic personality disorder. The symptoms for that are grandiosity. They need admiration. They lack empathy. They're really like they think that they're better than everyone. So they're believing that they deserve special treatment because they are better than everyone around them. The next or last one is borderline personality disorder. And the symptoms are mood instability, impulsive behavior, and an unstable self-image about relationships. So for example, one day idolizing a close friend, and the next day they feel betrayed and they're pushing them away. So the key takeaways for cluster B is that cluster B disorders often result in stormy relationships and emotional outbursts. The last of the clusters we're going to talk about is cluster C, and that is anxious or fearful behaviors. So individuals in this cluster struggle with chronic anxiety, insecurity, or the need for control. Their behaviors are driven by fear, especially of rejection, criticism, or abandonment. So we'll start with avoidant personality disorder. The symptoms are social inhibitions, feeling of inadequacy, and fear of rejection. So, for example, avoiding social gatherings despite craving connection because of the intense fear of criticism. The next one is dependent personality disorder. The symptoms are an excessive need to be taken care of and difficulty making independent decisions. So, for example, relying on a partner to decide everything from what to eat to what career to pursue to absolutely everything in your life. The last one, obsessive compulsive personality disorder. The symptoms are preoccupation with order, perfectionism, and control. This is not to be confused with OCD. This is completely different. So, for example, a manager who micromanages everything and criticizes others for their small mistake. The key takeaway for cluster C is that they are rooted in anxiety and a need for structure or reassurance. So personality disorders are not just personality quirks. They're long-term patterns that impact how a person relates to others and handles their emotions. So understanding these clusters really helps us approach mental health with more compassion and sort of more insight on how to help these people move forward. So on the slide, I just made a little chart with all three clusters, the key traits and the disorders associated with each of the clusters to help you sort of compartmentalize them a little bit better in case you do get a question related to these. So let's look at some of the causes. Personality disorders are complex and deeply rooted patterns of thinking, feeling, and behavior that really develop over time. But where do they come from? Just like many mental health conditions, personality disorders arise from a combination of biological, psychological, social, and behavior factors. We've heard this before in other videos, correct? When we talk about mental health conditions. So let's break that down each of the categories. Let's start with the biological causes. So first, let's talk about that. Research shows that some individuals may have a genetic predisposition to traits like impulsivity or emotional instability, which can increase their risk for developing personality disorders. There's also evidence that neurotransmitter imbalances, particularly low serotonin levels, are linked to issues with mood regulation, aggression, and impulse control, all of which are in common with certain personality disorders like borderline or antisocial personality disorder. Now let's look at the psychological causes, which are often originated from childhood experiences. So people who develop personality disorders may have used maladaptive coping mechanisms like emotional withdrawal, distrust, or aggression to survive difficult emotional environments. So additionally, poor emotional regulation, chronic feelings of low self-worth, or unresolved trauma can lead to lasting personality patterns that affect how a person views themselves and others. Next one, social and cultural causes. Environmental and cultural factors also play a big role. So growing up in a dysfunctional family, for example, one marked by abuse or neglect or lack of emotional support, can seriously disrupt healthy personality development. So on a broader level, cultural norms and societal pressures can shape behavior and expectations. So for example, in some environments, emotional suppression or independence may be encouraged, which would contribute to certain personality traits being exaggerated over time. And lastly, behavioral causes. So we focus on how certain traits are learned and then reinforced. So if a person finds that certain behaviors like manipulation, avoidance, or emotional outbursts help them avoid pain or get their needs met, those behaviors can become deeply ingrained. So over time, these patterns become harder to break, especially if the person has never learned healthier ways to cope with stress or disappointment or just being in a relationship. So in reality, no single cause explains personality disorders. They're shaped by a web of inherited traits, emotional experiences, environment, and learned behaviors. So understanding the possible causes allows for more empathy, better diagnosis, and therefore more effective treatment. Okay, so here's another little chart. I know I always add these into the slideshows, but a lot of my students say that charts really help them in their notes to just kind of like break it all down. And when they're studying for tests, they find the charts super helpful. So I like to kind of include them into the videos as well so that you have them. So the clusters and an example causes. So we have cluster A, childhood trauma leading to mistrust, paranoid or detachment, schizoid. The cluster B, emotional neglect contributing to instability. That would be borderline personality, or need for admiration, narcissistic disorder. So here we go. And then cluster C, we have overprotective parenting leading to dependency or fear of rejection. So just how they kind of all work together to help you sort of give some examples for each of the clusters. Okay, so what are our key takeaways after learning about the different clusters? We need to be able to memorize the traits and examples for each of the clusters. We need to be able to distinguish between disorders within the same cluster, for example, antisocial versus borderline. And you need to be able to understand the role of biological, psychological, and social causes. And hopefully this will get you the 5 on the exam. And that is all the essential knowledge you need to know to answer CED question number 10 for 5.4. Describe the symptoms and possible causes of selected personality disorders. So hopefully if you found that helpful, please hit that like and subscribe button for me. Leave me any comments, or if you want to keep emailing, that's fine too. I've been getting some great emails from all over the world, which is really, really fun to read. And I like to see the comments as well. But hopefully you did find this helpful for your final exam or your unit exam or whatever you're studying for right now. That's the whole goal, right, is to get that 5 on that exam. So thank you so much for listening. See you next time.